Let's get started.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Rabbi.
Good afternoon. Well,
Afternoon, Ben.
yes, it is afternoon here. I was about to say it's still morning, but then I realized. Okay. So welcome to another exciting installment. All right, we Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law. We're chapter 91, and we're up to number 12. Now, again, just as a reminder, we're speaking about a situation where somebody is not well, but it's a minor situation. So, life-threatening situation. We're going to, God forbid, we're going to speak about the next chapter. Serious illness we'll touch on at the end of this chapter. So at the moment, we're just speaking about someone who, they're just not feeling so great. So there's no danger. And as we said in the introduction to the chapter, there's a rabbinic decree against taking many medications or doing healing activities on Shabbos when it is not, when it's only serious. It's not a serious situation. It's only minor. And the concern is that someone may come to grind the medicine or do some other, biblically prohibited activity. So again, emphasizing it's only when it's a minor situation, right? Someone's really injured or really not well, then they have to do something. Yeah, Robert. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just logged on. Are we still in chapter 91 or have we?
91,
okay, good.
Number 12.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, number 12. Now, someone has some type of like a boil, or it's a bit of infection. And again, we're not talking about now it's going gangrene or serious infection. What's happening is that it's there's some discomfort because it's it's a bit swollen, so a little bit sensitive. So to open it up the way that doctors do, which the intention is to keep it open, to widen up, so as well as the pus coming out, the intention is to let the air in, that it should heal. In other words, you want the opening. How is it chayiv? So this is a biblical prohibition, because it's interesting. It's actually a tolda. It's a secondary action of building, because you've made a doorway, right? That's the purpose. It's to drain the wound, so you want things to go out, and you want the air and everything to come in, so it should heal. So this is making a doorway. This is if you do it in the manner that a doctor does it, with the skill and various things. However, the person is just popping this boil just to relieve the pressure, because that's a little bit painful. He's not really worried about it staying open to heal at the moment. It's just sometimes it hurts a little bit, and it's just to let it out. And you don't care if it closes up immediately afterwards, once it's been drained. Then you're allowed to do that because of the suffering, to avoid the pain. So again, I emphasize, some people joined in the middle. We're not speaking about where this is this terrible infection, it can go gangrene and who knows what, God forbid. It's a case of discomfort. But now, even when you're allowed to do it, just to open up the boil a little bit, just to let out the pressure. This is if you poke it with a needle and the like. avoid this upon, but you can't do it with your nails. You can't like tear open the top. Because if you do that, you're going to detach some of the skin. And this is also a biblical prohibition of taking away the skin with the nails. This is like we can't do that. The gamli they machat. Sorry. The gamli they machat gedoyme. And even when you're using a needle or a pin to pop it, kiven sheish lachush, shemis kaven shitash besucha kedei shetayis leicha gam achakach. Right? There is concern that person might still want the wound to remain open. Okay, so if possible, to preferably have a non-Jew do it, but if not, then not. So just to summarize, there's some type of infection. There's accumulation of pus, and it's painful. So to open it up properly, the way a doctor would open up and drain it, we can't do, because this is not only draining it. The way the doctor does it is leaves it. He widens the top to let the air in and various things, so it's going to heal better. So this is making a doorway. So this we can't do. But just to pop it, just to let it out a little bit, just to relieve the pressure so it doesn't hurt, is allowed, as long as the intention is that you don't care if it stays open. If it closes up straight away, is no problem. So that's number 12. All right. Any questions? No, I hope I'm not putting anyone off their lunch. That's number 13. Now, mish yesh loy neke bezroya. Someone is got a, once I say a hole in his arm, but there's some type of open wound there. And again, we're not speaking about a case where there's risk of losing the arm. It's under control. It's relatively minor. Karin aftaira. It's called aftaira. It's a fistula in English for those who are interested. In this Damanekev Getsas, now if it started to heal, it's closing a little bit. Also, they the Seicha kidneys shibasech. Can't put a bean in it to keep it open. Because the intention is that it should remain open. Because again, the point is to somehow helps the healing. And this is keeping the doorway, making a doorway, and you can't do that. Or a tear. Now, a bandage, or really a dressing with a medicated dressing is with tear, not just the bandage, but there's some type of ointment or something is put on the side that goes on the skin. Now, shenasasam esmo, and you put it on, you prepared, it was all made yesterday. It was prepared yesterday. You can put it on this wound. Because the purpose of this wound is just to heal. Okay, again, we're on chapter 91 in Yud Gimel number 13. Let's just join us. So putting this bandage on is the intention isn't to do an act of healing. The intention is to protect the wound from things on the outside. Things don't get in. But if you know that when you apply the bandage, because you're going to put on tight, that it's going to squeeze out pus or blood, then you're not allowed to. And again, I'm emphasizing this is a minor injury. We're not dealing with a serious, if it's something serious, then we're not so concerned that that blood's going to come out. But one of the things that we can't do on Shabbos is make a wound that causes blood to come out. This is why, for an example, we have a special verse in the Torah that tells us that for a bris, if the 8th day is Shabbos, even if it's Shabbos or Yom Tov, the 8th day, you can still do the bris on the 8th day. And without that verse, we wouldn't think you'd be allowed to. Now, if that's only if it's actually the 8th day, for some reason the bris got postponed, let's say now it's the 10th day, first available day you could have the bris, there was some health issue, let's say, and the first available day is Shabbos, it's bad luck, you have to wait till after Shabbos. But to do the bris on the actual 8th day, we have a special verse that allows us to do it on Shabbos. If not for that, we wouldn't be able to, because it's making a wound. It's drawing blood, which is one of the things that we can't do. So if by putting on the dressing, this is going to cause the start squeezing out blood, then you can't put it on. Likewise, if you're going to wipe it, you're going to wipe the wound, I guess with some type of clean it up and various things. If you know, so it has to be a certainty that by wiping it, the pressure is going to push out blood or pus. Also, the kancha, you can't wipe it either. Now, in the brackets, this is not the same. In Law 12, we had a situation where you could put a pin into a boil or something and pop it, and release the pus that if it was causing discomfort. So here we say you can't wipe it when the pus is going to come out. It's different. Why is it different? The in the case of the boil, any blood or pus that's there, it's gathered, right? It's in the head. It's already come out of the any blood that's there has already come out of the veins or capillaries, wherever it is, and it's sitting there gathered in the in the boil part. And all you're doing is releasing it. It's already, except for this little bit of skin that's holding it in, it's already left the body. You're not making a new wound. The blood has already flowed out of the injury. But here in this case, where you're talking about wiping or tightly bandaging an actual wound, any blood that's going to come out or pass, it's inside the flesh, it's still in the blood vessels and various things. So if you're pushing it out, you're drawing the blood, you're making the wound. Okay. Questions, comments? Yes, Susan.
Okay, two things. You said when there's a wound, you can put a bean. Did you say put a bean to stop it?
No, we said we can't put the bean. There was some type of wound. I mean, again, I couldn't imagine the doctor doing it today, but there was some type of injury that to allow air in to help it heal, they would put a bean to stop the wound closing entirely. So, although I don't think that's something that we do today, but you can't do that because that's making the doorway.
All right. Can you pour hydrogen peroxide on this?
You can definitely pour. Here the only concern is when you're wiping it.
No, not even
wiping. So just pouring is not a problem. Saying here they're just worried about a person creating a wound and pushing out the blood, drawing blood. But to pour on it is not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Some antiseptic creams that we have today, we potentially have the issue with smoothing, which can, but if you just dab it on without like rubbing it in properly, it's not a problem. Yeah, so here the issue is about drawing blood. Yeah, David.
What if the purpose of the bandage is to try to slow the bleeding or to stop the bleeding?
Yeah, so then that's that's right. So that's probably also going to be a more serious case. If we have to apply a bandage to stop the blood. And we'll get to more serious soon. And good point. If the purpose is to stop the flow, then we're doing the opposite of making the wound. But here, this situation, at the moment, there's not blood coming out. But by the pressure of wiping it or tying a bandage on tightly, it's going to squeeze the blood out. Then that's the issue we're speaking about. But to stop the blood is, we don't want blood flowing, even when it's not Shabbos. That's okay. It's number 14. Makash nisrape. You have a wound that's healed. So obviously, if it's totally healed, we're not doing anything to it. What we mean is it's healed enough. Blood isn't going to come out now. It's got a bit of a scab, something like that. Now we can put on a dressing, and again, this dressing means it has some type of antiseptic or creams or different on it. We can put it on if it was made yesterday. No, it's before Shabbos. Because the purpose of the bandage in this case is to protect it. We just don't want dirt to get into it. We don't want to get infected. It's not to actually heal the wound. And you can also remove some of the crusting of the scab around the wound if necessary, if you need it. Okay, Tesvav 15. A person gets a splinter. Right, so they got a splinter stuck in their skin. You can take it out with a pin. You just have to be very careful not to cause blood to come out. Because that will be making a wound, and that's a problem. So today probably use tweezers or something. Pull it out if you have, so you can do that if need be. Okay, so now we're talking about, so till now, we've been speaking about minor things, the equivalent of a head cold, a little bit of a headache, a small cut. So now we're talking about a little more serious. So test sign number 16. A person who's bedridden, essentially. So again, we're not talking about a life-threatening situation. That's going to be even more lenient, as we discussed. So their life isn't in danger, but they're bedridden. But there's no danger to their life. They're just very sick. Or your person has some type of sickness that causes the entire body to feel pain. Now, even though they're not bedridden, they can keep going. They consider like someone who's bedridden. Because when it affects the entire body, it's also another level of seriousness and another level of discomfort. And a person is, even if they're pushing through, they're not really doing that well if it's something that's affecting the entire body. So, in this situation, we can ask a non-Jew to do anything that's medicinal. We can ask him to cook for the person. Turn on the light, turn off the light, turn on the machine, turn off the machine. Whatever he needs, we can. Well, once whatever he needs, we're going to give some qualification for what you can and can't do in a minute. But normally, you can't ask a non-Jew to do things on Shabbos that you can't do yourself. Now, because this, just as a reminder for what we discussed before, some people have joined the lessons since then. Technically, from a Torah perspective, you could ask a non-Jew to do things on Shabbos because a Jew has to keep Shabbos and a non-Jew doesn't. As a matter of fact, the non-Jew is not allowed to keep Shabbos. So what happened though, and it happened in the times of the Greek occupation before the Hanukkah story, was the first time we had Jews and non-Jews living together in the same neighborhoods, in reasonably good terms. For some people, started having non-Jews, following them around and doing everything for them. Lit the fire, put on the candle, whatever they needed doing. And it destroyed the spirit of Shabbos. So therefore, the sages of the time made a decree that we cannot ask a non-Jew to do anything that we can't do ourselves. But they made some exceptions when they made this decree. So one of the exceptions is for a seriously ill person. Someone's bedridden. So in this case, we can ask the non-Jew. It's biblically allowed, and the rabbinical prohibition was never in this situation. This situation was never part of the decree. But we can ask the non-Jew to do medicinal procedures, to cook for him, and he's allowed to eat this food that was cooked on Shabbos by a non-Jew, because on this day, it's permitted for him to eat something that was cooked through a non-Jew. So normally something that was cooked on Shabbos, we can't eat on Shabbos, and we have to wait after Shabbos the amount of time it would take to cook. So let's say this food takes an hour. So cook takes an hour to prepare, it has to be on the stove, let's say for an hour. Then even though a non-Jew did it, he may have made it for you, he didn't know you can't have something cooked on Shabbos. So we can't have it on Shabbos because Shabbos is broken in order for us to have something. But even after Shabbos, we have to wait an hour because that's how long it would take to cook. So we shouldn't benefit from the fact that it was made on Shabbos. That's normal circumstances. But here in this situation, this person is allowed to eat what the non-Jew made on Shabbos because of his health situation. So he's even allowed to eat it on Shabbos as soon as it's cooked. Sometimes someone's not well, they need hot food, give them some soup, whatever happens to be. Okay, Yud Zayin 17, it's continuation, and I'll give us a few more details. And this person is allowed to take any medication and drink medicine, eat medicine, right? So this is different to what we said before about someone who is only, slightly unwell, a little bit of a cold. We say they shouldn't take medications because otherwise someone might come to grind the medication. Here in this situation where he's bedridden or he's, very unwell, take any medications. And you can also, someone else or himself, either him or someone else, can do any medicinal activity as long as it's not a malacha, as long as it's not one of the things you can't do on Shabbos. You can't even do something that's rabbinically prohibited. So for an example, so he can't warm up the medicine, or neither can another Jew. So, but he could he could give him the medication. He could apply bandages. Now we're talking about a more serious case. So anything that doesn't actually break Shabbos, a Jew can do themselves, either the sick person himself or someone else. And something that is rabbinically prohibited, we're going to say in a minute, you can ask a non-Jew to do. But something's biblically prohibited, so we can't ask the non-Jew to do. But something that is rabbinically prohibited, we can ask the non-Jew to do. Vim engoy, and if there's no non-Jew around, then we can have a Jew do something rabbinically prohibited, but in an unusual way, not in the normal manner. So, let's say for an example, if they're right-handed, they do it with their left hand. You know, it's like a unusual sort of, or you need to carry something in a place where it's not a real shusarabim, not a real public domain. It's only a rabbinically prohibited, but the person needs it, otherwise they're going to be in great suffering. Then maybe you could take it, I don't know, carry it behind your ear instead of in your hand, you know, in a something like that. They have in quite a few hospitals in Israel that run according to halacha. So one of the things that we can't do rabbinically is called a groma. So a groma means you don't do it directly. You don't do the malacha directly. You do it indirectly. So an example might be, I pull a lever and it turns something. That turning causes something else, another lever to get pulled, and that makes something happen. That's a malacha, right? So this is something that's rabbinically prohibited. So a lot of the machinery that they have has a Shabbos mode, or it's made like this, how it always works, that instead of when they press the button or turn something on, it doesn't directly do the malacha. It does something that does something that's permitted, but causes the next thing to happen. You know, and they have electric wheelchairs also for, you know, people with MS and different things. It's also like that. That when they move the controls, it doesn't. It's like there's a delay because it's doing something which is not a Shabbos problem, but that then causes the movement to happen. So, you know, some of the guards that they have in some areas, in religious areas around the religious mashavs in Israel, the mashav security, they even have telephones that, again, they're made in a way that you don't actually dial directly. You press the button, and that does something that's permitted on Shabbos, and that causes then for the number to, you know, the number that's saved to be dialed, you know, and then they call for backup like that, or they communicate like that in a non-emergency situation. So it's, I guess we'll say it's semi-emergency, because, you know, they have to have some type of communication, and, you know, there's a concern. But when the life-threatening situation isn't actually playing out, so they tried to do things that are only rabbinically prohibited, not biblically.
I think maybe they call it push to talk.
I don't know. I couldn't explain to you the mechanics. Just the
Push to talk. It's a system to.
yeah, could be but just can only tell you the halachic theory behind it. So you know, I never did any engineering.
Okay,
I'm a
you
switch.
can always start. It's never too late.
That's right. You know, it's one of the things, without getting too much off topic, but it used to be. Yeah, you had a question?
No, I
Yeah,
just
you're
said
on
I'm a
mute.
switch.
Yeah.
You can't, for instance, turn a light off with your elbow.
Well, the light, no. So under normal circumstances, definitely not. Even for the sick person, probably not, because even though you're knocking the switch in not the usual way, but the movement of the switch is the normal way. But if there was some, in theory, I can't think of how you do it, but some weird way to open the circuit instead of flicking the switch, then for a very sick person, then you could. So yeah, I mean, that's what the machines have in the hospitals. I'm not familiar with the engineering behind it, but in concept, you know, it's doing something which does not involve malacha, and that action causes the thing that causes the malacha. So this we can do for a sick person, but we can't do for a regular person.
Thanks.
So I was just saying, slightly off the topic, that in America for many years, shuls used to use microphones on Shabbos, Orthodox shuls, right? Because what happened was the people who knew the halacha didn't understand how a microphone worked, and the people who knew how microphones work, didn't know the halachas. So what happened is that we're giving each other the wrong information, well, not relevant information. The rabbis who wanted to know if it was a Shabbos problem were asking the wrong questions because they weren't aware of exactly how the microphone works. And the people who were giving information how the microphone works weren't giving the right information because they didn't know which information they needed. So there was a misconception that you can use a microphone on Shabbos, and many respectable shuls did. So one of the first people, the Baba Shirav actually was one of the first people. He studied engineering, and he obviously knew halacha, and so he was one of the people he explained what the issues were, and once explained to both sides, so the people who knew how microphones work now knew what the halachic issues were, and the people who knew halacha now knew how a microphone works properly. Then it very soon disappeared. But I used to daven in a shul, when I was a yeshiva student, and it's been totally renovated since then. But at that stage, there was still a little hole in the podium where the person leading the service was, where many years ago the microphone used to be, right? Even though it hadn't been a microphone for many years. So I plead guilty to being in that situation, that although I can tell you the halachic issues, I can't tell you how the engineering works. So, but there's a whole organization in Israel that works on things like this.
We have a microphone system in our shul, but it's never used during Shabbat or holidays.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not on Shabbos is no problem. Well, it actually can also be a separate problem. Again, I'm sure when they use it in your shul is when there's no problem. Let's say, for example, let's say Purim, right? When it's a weekday, you need to hear the Megillah directly from the person, not through a microphone.
Right.
Right? Because what happens is when you're coming out of the speakers, you're not actually hearing the voice. You're hearing these electronic impulses that have been,
No,
reconstructed.
it's not used on
Yeah.
Purim.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm sure it's not. I'm just clarifying for the group. When let's say Havdalah, the same thing Havdalah, which is, after Shabbos, the same issue. This is why you can't hear these things on the telephone or by Zoom, even when it's not Shabbos Yontif. Right? Now, someone who really is in quarantine, different things, and can't go out, even if not technically doing the mitzvah here in Megillah, might be good to at least hear it by Zoom. At least they get a remembrance of the mitzvah. But to actually fulfill the mitzvah, it doesn't help. So that's. So again, just to summarize, this person who is ill, again, not life-threatening situation, just seriously ill. So they can take any medications, they can, and I also point out this is even if it's in potential. So let's say, for example, a person is taking antibiotics, and but if they stop taking it, all the infection is going to come. They're going to get sick again. Even though right now they're perhaps doing better, they can continue taking the antibiotics. Or there's other medications that people need that. I don't want to get too much off the topic. Just to explain, I was a rabbi in a place called Brisbane in Australia, and we arrived on a Thursday. So that Friday night, a gentleman called us, my wife and I, aside, and said, "Can I please ask your assistance?" So sure, happy. That's why we're here, right? What do you need? So he tells them it's not funny. Even though it's he says that his son is a very good boy when he takes his medication. And when he doesn't, he has problems. And he didn't take his medication, and he tried to kill his wife with an axe. He was chasing her down the street with the axe, and she said she can't go back. She's had enough. So he asked, could we please convince her to go back, because now's when he needs her the most. Now, needless to say, we didn't. But, I mean, if she would want to go back herself, we might put in some support system of various things, but we're definitely not going to force, pressure someone under the circumstances. But what I mentioned that now, it could be missing one day. This person's going to be fine, and they're not bedridden, and they're not. But this person needs to take their medication. Someone's in a situation like that, and it's so. Bedridden is more like a name of a topic.
Category.
Yeah, category. Yeah. So it's no, it's till now we've been about minor issues, and so let's not take your medicines. Wait till after Shabbos. It's no problem. But once it starts getting into the serious category, even before the life-threatening situation, then we need to. So if a person who's in a serious situation can take any medications they need, and we can ask a non-Jew to do things for us for the person. Yeah, Robert, yeah. You're on mute. You're still muted.
Okay, but again, like it's somebody who's insulin dependent, and
Well,
so
that's
that's something you
life-threatening.
have to do, right? So
That's life-threatening.
you get a pass. Yeah.
Correct. That's life-threatening. And so we started off the chapter with speaking about minor ailments, and we were rather strict about what they can do. Now we've gone to serious ailment, but not life-threatening, and we see you can do quite a lot. In the next chapter, we're going to speak about life-threatening situations. Okay. Number 18. I guess this was rather relevant at the time this text was written. You have a non-Jewish doctor who is vaccinating against smallpox. Right, so I'm not sure why that's in this chapter, because you would probably say, smallpox, the Black Death might have been in the life-threatening situation. But I guess there wasn't an actual outbreak at that time, but it's concerning. So he's allowed to give the vaccination on Shabbos for the smallpox. Now, im Yachol Yisrael Lafaisa B'Mam Shas Lacha Shabbos. Now, if the Jew can pay after Shabbos, it can make him happy, that and satisfy they will pay till after Shabbos. Yasa Cain, then that's what you should do. The Imlav, if not, he's not going to wait till after Shabbos. And now you need this protection against smallpox. Tzarich Nasos b'Shabbos, and it has to be done Shabbos. You can't postpone it. So you can still do it. You can even pay him, but it should be a non-Jew that holds the child and not a Jew that holds the child. So we're not actively involved. David.
Yeah, in my English translation, it just uses the word vaccination.
Okay, so avabuos means like that's actually the word that it uses for the plague in Egypt of the boils. Yeah, it means the boils, but it's referring to the smallpox. So it wouldn't be a vaccination in general. Now, it could apply to other vaccinations. Depends what it is and the circumstances. But so this masmiach babuas, this means smallpox. I'm not sure why it maybe they're just whoever's translators decided that it applies across the board.
No,
But
that's how it's
Maybe-
called. That's how it's called in Hebrew.
yeah, but well, this is how it was called in those times. And but this is speaking about it's it is a life-threatening disease, particularly for children. That's why we're speaking about children. And now, I would imagine if you're talking about in when there's an actual outbreak, you wouldn't even have to worry anything on Shabbos. So I guess it's speaking about it's not an outbreak, but it was something that came every however few years or decade. It was something was a large concern, and the vaccine had proved it effective. So and I'm not getting into debates of which vaccines are effective and not effective, and whether things are actually life-threatening or not life-threatening. We're just speaking the general principles. So here, if we're presuming it's an effective vaccine, and there is a serious concern, then we can even do it on Shabbos. Yeah, Julian, yes.
Rabbi, if you take a blood thinner and you're supposed to take it, say, twice a day, and it could be, if it's potentially, could be potentially harmful if you don't take it.
Yes.
Does the rabbi have a discretion, or I mean, he's not a medical man?
Blood thinner will also be something that you could say would be a life-threatening situation, God forbid, because if someone who is the doctor's prescribed them to take it, I guess there's a concern of heart attack or stroke or various things, God forbid, which are life-threatening situations. So therefore, it's even beyond this chapter. It's in the next chapter when there's a life-threatening situation and everything overrules. Now, if it's not that serious, like in other words, if the twice a day, you could take it on Friday before Shabbos, the second one, before Shabbos starts. And, on the one on Saturday, at least one after Shabbos, and maybe it doesn't matter if you miss once, then that would be better. But if it's a situation where you really need to have that constant, make sure the medication is in the blood system, well, then, that's a life-threatening situation. That's going to overrule Shabbos.
Thank you.
No problems. Yes, David. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a correction. Somebody before said, well, certain conditions you're given a pass on Shabbos. I think it's not really that you're given a pass, it's that the Torah is telling you this is what you should do. It's not that the Torah says don't apply this law of Shabbos. The Torah is telling you break Shabbos for this condition.
Right. So now the mitzvah, till now the mitzvah was to not do something on Shabbos. Now the mitzvah is to do something on Shabbos. There's a famous story. Today is the yard site of Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. It's famous for a variety of reasons, but one time that where he lived, there was, I believe it was typhus, or there was an outbreak. And the rabbis decided that people shouldn't fast on Yom Kippur that year. Because it was going around, and and the people in a weakened state, and so they were worried that people weren't going to listen. People are going to fast on Yom Kippur anyway. So what he did, after davening Yom Kippur, he got up in the bimah and he made kiddush and ate and drank. And he commented afterwards, even though he was actually particularly healthy and he perhaps could have fasted, but he knew the only way to get the masses to eat that year was if he did that. So normally eating Yom Kippur is very, well, I was going to say problematic, but it's beyond that. You can't eat on Yom Kippur. The mitzvah is not to eat, but here the circumstances is to eat. And likewise, someone was asking before about diabetic. Most diabetics, and again, depends on how serious, most diabetics need at least small amounts regularly of food. In which case, not only they're allowed not to fast, now they're not allowed to fast, because fasting can become a life-threatening situation for them. God forbid. So, it's the same Hashem that tells us to fast or to keep Shabbos now tells us under these circumstances don't fast or don't keep Shabbos, or it's not breaking Shabbos, because this is what Shabbos demands our circumstances. Yes. Anna, yes.
Can you kind of specify a little bit the rules for childbirth?
Okay, so childbirth, it's like it's somewhere in between, meaning it's not necessarily the same life-threatening situation, you know, as God forbid someone was in a car accident or all sort of or having a heart attack, but it is something that you know, there's a potential, you know, if people, you know, if it's on top. So if a lady was planning to go to hospital, you know, to have the birth, she's allowed to travel to the hospital. If it's, again, this is not for a checkup, it's for expecting that the birth is happening. Someone can go with her.
It's imminent.
Yes,
It's imminent.
Or at least you think it is, because sometimes you get your false alarms.
Right.
But you you know, you can only go by what information you have. No one's a prophet. Someone can go with her, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to come back. So I'll give you an example. My daughter gave birth about 2 minutes before Sukkah started. And so my wife and my son-in-law were with her, so they didn't have to travel. They're already in the birthing center before Yom Tov. But what it did mean is that you know, after the baby's born and everything settled down, there's not really a emergency situation, so they can't really come home, you know, by you know. So you know, as we're getting closer to Yom Tov, we realized. So my son booked a hotel, you know, sort of around the corner, and the next day, with the help of one of the nurses, the nurse took my daughter down the elevator, you know, different thing and then they took it to. So they spent the first 2 days Yom Tov in the hotel. Now, but both my wife and son-in-law were able. One stayed and one walked in. It was about an hour and a half walk, you know, whatever it was. And we sent supplies for someone who wasn't Jewish, right? Someone who works for one of my sons took a carload, you know, with the various food supplies and other supplies, you know, the diapers and clothing and, you know, different things. So we're able to ask a non-Jew to travel on Yom Tov and various things. So, and obviously, if God forbid there's any emergency, then like any other serious or life-threatening situation, you can pretty much, you know, do anything. So I don't know if that sort of clarified it for you a little bit, but it's, you know, if you need to call a midwife if you're having a home birth, or you need to call an ambulance if you're going to somewhere else, then you can make those calls.
Okay.
Yeah, Susan. Oh, so you're still asking? No. Yeah, Susan.
Let me, so they stayed in, your son-in-law and wife stayed in a hotel near the.
And my daughter-in-law. And my daughter. My daughter.
And the baby too.
Yeah, and the baby. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I see. I thought they were separated. That's why.
No. So everyone else, in, you know, the ones who didn't just give birth could walk an hour and a half home. But my daughter wasn't quite up to that yet. Probably neither was the baby. So, but you know, if I'll just give an example how, you know, because, you know, Baruch Hashem, the birth was smooth and everyone was doing well, there wasn't a justification to bring them home in the car.
Right.
On Yom Tov. So now, perhaps if we hadn't had time to book a hotel, you know, we saw that it was going that way, and you know they're going to be dumped out in the street.
Oh.
And you got 2 days Yom Tov. That you know, and some hospitals do that. They say, sorry, we need the bed for the next person. Out you go. You know, then perhaps we would have had to have done something, but you know.
It's good that you had that situation, that you didn't have that. That's,
yeah.
Yeah, but his son-in-law planned it that way to have the hotel room.
Well, it was
Which
getting
is-
close. He actually
Right,
went
right.
the night before and then it stopped and started again, you know, it ended up. So we saw that it's getting close. So we made arrangements. We had the time, yeah. Baruch Hashem. That's what happened. All right. It was yeah. And then of course when we sent the non-Jewish person with all the supplies, it's Yom Tov, so you can't just call on the phone and ask my son-in-law to come down. But it ended up was like a divine providence. They like met in the parking lot. I guess he figured in that area the only person who looked like a Hasidic Jew must have been my son-in-law. So sometimes the appearance gives it away. Again in Brisbane, you know, we mentioned that, you know, one time I was in the doctor and someone asked me, are you Jewish? You know, with my yarmulke beard and sisters. So I asked him, why do you ask? But anyway, he told me he's having a circumcision and he wants to know what it's like.
Tell him
I
it's pain-
probably shouldn't have said it to him, but I told him the old joke. You know, I said, oh, it's bad. I had one when I was 8 days old and I couldn't walk for almost a year. But perhaps I should have been a little more sensitive. I think that's why he was there. But what can we do? All right. Chapter 92. 92. This is the laws of a sick person who there's a life-threatening situation, or he's being forced to break Shabbos. Now, although we're going to speak about the health first and the force later, we're not going to get to it today, but just to give you an idea what we're speaking about, you know, there's two types of forced. There's forced because you're a Jew and they want a Jew to transgress. And there's forced that's got nothing to do with being a Jew. So an example of that would be, let's say this Jewish person, you know, walking down the street, minding their own business, coming home from shul, and all of a sudden, as they're walking past the bank, out come the bank robbers with the guns, and they say, get in the car and drive. Now, they're not trying to force someone to drive on Shabbos because they're Jewish. It's just happened to be they're in the wrong place in the wrong time, right? But they've got guns, so you don't really want to say no. So this is an example of being forced that creates. So the forced, we mean not someone's like saying, "Oh, come on," or they, you know, putting a little bit of pressure. By force, we mean it becomes dangerous. So there's going to be. So that example I gave, the person will be allowed to get in the car and drive on Shabbos, because, you know, the guy's got a gun. We don't know what he's going to do if you say no. As a matter of fact, we're quite worried what he might do. So that'll be in the second part of the chapter. So, but number one.
Yeah.
The Chiyah, he Shabbos eitzos konos nefashos. When you have a life-threatening situation, it pushes Shabbos to the side. So so what we mean by Chiyah means like shoved, you know, Shabbos to the side. In other words, we'll have often, sometimes you can have two Jewish values and they conflict with each other. So which one takes priority? So in this case, except for three things, and we discussed this much earlier on, three things to do idol worship is one of them, to murder someone, or the third one is to have an illegal, sort of immoral sexual relationship. Except for those three things, which if someone is told do one of these three things or die, the person has to give up their life. You know, they're told, you know, murder someone who's not deserving to be killed. Right? I'm speaking someone who, you know, let's say that person himself is a murderer, and you're being told to execute them as something else. But someone who doesn't deserve to be killed, so that's murder. And they say murder this person, or they're going to kill him, then he has to give up his life rather than murder an innocent person. So except for those three exceptions, Shabbos overrules, life-threatening situation overrules everything, even Shabbos. So we say Shabbos gets pushed aside when it comes to a life-threatening situation. Just like pretty much all the other mitzvahs of the Torah get pushed aside for a life-threatening situation. Therefore, you have a person who is in a life-threatening situation. Adam kosher, and he's a good person. Now, even though no one's perfect, he does certain things that are wrong out of because he enjoys it. So we're saying, in other words, we're not saying that you only break Shabbos to save a tzaddik. Even a regular person and regular people, and we all do. We've all done things that we probably shouldn't have in our lifetime. But even if it's just a baby that's just been born, so it's not like they've even established themselves as a viable human yet. Maybe the weak. Nevertheless, mitzvah lachalol as a Shabbos. The mitzvah now is to transgress Shabbos if it means saving their lives. Yeah, Susan. Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about their physical life.
Correct.
No, you're not talking about if somebody's having a mental breakdown and it's going to transgress Shabbos.
Well, there may very well be emotional / psychological situations that we're also going to put into a life-threatening situation, because people can, if they're having a breakdown, they can be dangerous themselves, to others,
Yes,
to
exactly.
and various things. So we would include that. Now it's harder to tell. That's the problem. Someone who's fallen down and bleeding, God forbid, you can see it. There can
But
be
a mental thing is what.
That's right.
You can't trust what they're gonna. You don't know what they're gonna do.
There are sometimes situations where someone is the equivalent of that emotion psychologically, but you don't notice it. They hide it, at least from, because you can't actually see it with your eyes. So it's harder to judge at times. But if a person is aware or they have a strong suspicion, then it would be the same situation. Right, so the same thing. So, danger to one's life is also, psychotic would even be psychological. Now, but the person doesn't want it. So, let's say the person has to take a medication that's not kosher, or he has to do something to break Shabbos, and he's saying, no, I don't want to break Shabbos. But you force him. You tell him, you make him. Right? The person has to, when the halacha says that his treatment overrules Shabbos or whatever other mitzvah, he must, and we have to try and, God will be and trying to keep the mitzvah when he's not meant to is a great sin, and it's called a chassid shaita. A chassid shaita, you're gonna translate the words, I guess, as the pious fool. But the classic case in the Talmud of a chassid shaita is there's a man walking by a river, and he sees a lady drowning in the river. But he says, as she's undressed to go into the river, he says, "Oh, it's wouldn't be appropriate for me to go to her because she's not dressed, and lets her drown." Right? Now, this is a made-up example, of course. Hopefully, no one ever did that. But that's called the pious idiot, pious fool. Right? He's trying to be pious, but he's missed the point. Right? He has to save her. She's not dressed. Well, okay, he'll cover up afterwards. But what are you going to do? You don't let someone drown. So that's the classic case given in the Talmud. So someone who, when it's a situation which you need to break Shabbos for, or you need to have not kosher medication, or you need to, whatever happens to be, and the person insists on doing what you normally do when it's not a life-threatening situation, he's a chassid shaita, is this pious fool, and it's the wrong thing to do. Right? This is, people when the medical situation means that they can't fast the Yom Kippur, and I've seen it. People say, "Well, no, I have to. I've 60 years I fasted Yom Kippur. I can't stop now." It could be the heart's in the right place, but it's the wrong thing. There's a time and a place for everything. There was the famous brothers, Rabbi Elimelech Lezhinsk and Rabbi Zisha Anapoli. So one time they were locked up, in Eastern Europe. They didn't need many excuses to lock up Jews in those days. And, they hadn't done anything, and they're in the prison cell. And they start studying Torah together. And they start dancing because they're so full of joy that even though they're in prison, they can still study Torah together. So the guard asks, what are you dancing about? And they explain they can study Torah. So he moves into the room a big bucket. They didn't have bathrooms with plumbing. So he puts in a big bucket so now they can't study Torah. So then they start dancing and together again. Says, now what are you dancing about? Says, now we're dancing that we're doing the mitzvah of not studying Torah because you're not allowed to study in a bathroom. So now we're doing this mitzvah, we're rejoicing. So the guy just took it out. He said, do what you want, right? So the story illustrates the point that why do we do anything in Judaism? Because that's what Hashem wants. And Hashem, under normal circumstances, wants us to fast Yom Kippur. But if the medical situation or whatever it is, now you don't fast Yom Kippur, that's what Hashem wants. Hashem wants that we keep Shabbos. If now, God forbid, someone's having a heart attack, Hashem wants us to call the ambulance or do CPR or use, the defibrillator, whatever it is. That's now the mitzvah. Hashem normally wants us to eat kosher, but it happens to be the life-saving medication is not kosher, and there's not another alternative. So obviously, there's another alternative. We'll take the other alternative. But if there's not another alternative, then Hashem wants us to take the medication. Right? So if we're doing things because Hashem wants, then we won't get into the situation. Now, this person is a chos. If he refuses to break Shabbos, he's a chassid shaita. He's this pious fool. This rapper that he doesn't want to be cured through this action. Lav nema, and about him it says, the verse says, I'm going to demand of his blood. In other words, Hashem considers him like a murderer because he killed himself by trying to be extra frum.
A special example would be using a pig's valve, heart valve, and install it in a human.
Yeah, well, but that's not even a problem to start with, because the only issue with the pig is to eat it.
The prohibition is just for eating.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be a problem to start with. But yes, but some people might find it distasteful, whatever it is, and that'll be even worse. So we sort of ran out of time, so we'll stop in the middle of questions. Yeah, Julian.
What time and days do you give a lecture?
Do I?
Which days do you give a shiur?
Just Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thursday afternoon only.
So Isaac, you want to ask something?
I think in the story you told, there was no dancing in the beginning. It was the Rebbe Lezhensk with his brother of Zusha. They both sat there and started learning Torah. And then they saw the toilet, and they said, we have to stop learning Torah. So the Rebbe Melech was all upset, we can't learn. And Rav Zusha said, in the same way it was a mitzvah to learn, now it's a mitzvah not to learn. So he accepted it, and then they were dancing, and they weren't learning. So the God said, what are you guys dancing about? And they said, because the toilet is here or something. We're not allowed to learn. So the guy says, he said, what are the toilets here? So the God took the toilet and he took it out. Then they were able to learn. So that was the story in the way that the book went. But
It
the
wasn't
God
a
did not
toilet.
put the toilet in because they were learning. That's too
wasn't a
much knowing
toilet.
God should know
It
what's
was not
going
a
on.
toilet.
Yeah, could be.
In the jail, they had
Thank you.
buckets. They
That's
did not
right.
have toilets.
Yeah, well, that's what they
But the
used. Yeah.
story is about the bucket.
All right. Wish everyone an amazing week.
Thank you,
Have a
Rabbi.
great Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Thank you.
Shabbos.
Stay safe.
Take
Have a
care.
good Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye all.
Welcome.